Well, good afternoon, or should I say good evening, everyone, and welcome to B.L.O.K. Sports. It is great to be here and great to be back talking about HBCU football. And we have a lot of action to catch up on today. And if you want to find out about scores of the game right now, you can also go to B.L.O.K. Sports, or should I say YourStreet.tv's website, and you'll be able to see some of the scores of the games that are currently going on right now. We're going to show you some of the current games that are going on, but we are also going to talk about some of the upcoming games as well. But let's take a look on our website and see some of the games that are currently going on right now, literally as we speak. And let's go ahead and switch over there right now. And as I said, this is live on www.yourstreet.tv if you want to get the latest of HBCU scores. So let's switch over there right now. And as you can see, here are some of the scores right now. And if you take a look on the B.L.O.K. Sports, should I say YourStreet.tv's website, you will have the opportunity to see they are separated by each conference here. And currently, as you can see some of these scores, for the SWAC conference, you have Bethune-Cookman in the fourth quarter. They are trailing the Miami Hurricanes by a score of 63-13. Not a good outing for them, but a lot of people were not expecting, unfortunately, as we call it, a money game to pan out that well for the Wildcats. And as we continue, we'll see most of these games will be starting at 7 p.m. for the other SWAC conference games as we go through Take a look. All of them will be starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also take a look at the MEAC. In the first quarter, you have Morgan State against Georgia Southern. That game is just underway in the first quarter. The Howard Bison will be taking on the Hampton Pirates. That game is in the first quarter as well. But you also see Norfolk State University. They played the Thundering Herd of Marshall, and they came up behind. They lost to them by a score of 55-3. That game, of course, as you can see, is a final. And other games that you see, Delaware State defeated the Lincoln Lions by a score of 34-0. And later on tonight, you will have at 7:30, the Aggies of North Carolina A&T will take on North Carolina Central at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. And also Morgan State will take on Texas Tech at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As we continue to go down, we will see the SIAC. And for these scores here, in the fourth quarter, you have Edward Waters narrowly leading Clark Atlanta by a score of 34-33. Wow, what a great game. Really close right here. And you also have Savannah State in the first quarter, tied, no score currently, with the Southeastern Fire, and that score is 0-0 in the first quarter. And of course you have Allen and Newberry. They start at 7 p.m. along with West Alabama and Morehouse, Elizabeth City. Sorry about that. My site is constantly updating, which is good. So you have the latest and greatest of all of the scores. Elizabeth City plays Benedict at 7. Miles and Alabama State at 7 p.m. as well as UAPB, Arkansas Pine Bluff. They are playing at 7 p.m. against the Lane Dragons. And Albany State will be taking on Mississippi College at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And last but not least, in the CIAA, you have in the second quarter, Lenore Ryan, they're leading Virginia State by a score of 10-7 in the second quarter. Livingstone is tied with Catawba. Please forgive me for the mispronunciation of this university, but they're tied with the Indians 7-7 in the second quarter. And next you have, of course, we've talked about this in the MEAC, where you have Delaware State defeating the Lions of Lincoln by a score of 34-0, and Bowie State defeating the New Haven Chargers by a score of 27-20. They are continuing on their torrent, should I say, their regular season winning streak, even with the new coach. So congratulations to Bowie State as they continue their winning ways. And as you can see, as I go back here and scroll down once again, as you can see, Bowie State defeating New Haven by a score of 27-20. So congratulations to Bowie State continuing on with their winning ways. And of course you have Benedict and Elizabeth City, as well as Wingate and Shaw, playing later on today at 7 o'clock. And as I said, we have a lot of great games in store for you on this day. It's just been filled with a lot of football action here. And let me take my glasses off here. But we're going to go through not only these games, but also, as I said, some of the upcoming games that may or may not have appeared on the schedule. And we want to make sure that we do cover all of the games that for all of the conferences that are mentioned and all of the conferences that are indicated. So we do want to make sure that we do give highlight to all of the conferences and everyone that's out there. And so as we take a look here, we are going to go back and look at some of the other games that actually took place last week. And even though this is mistype here, but this took place on August the 27th. Edward Waters lost to Florida Memorial by a score of 39-34. And for the other SIAC games, we went through a lot of the scores already from the earlier games, but we do not have a score for the Delta State Kentucky State game. You saw the score for Edward Waters and Clark Atlanta. Even though that is listed as the fourth quarter, we will keep you up to date to make sure that that game has gone final. And that game, and the final score of that game is 39-34. Clark Atlanta defeating Edward Waters on their home turf. So congratulations to the Clark Atlanta Panthers for defeating the Edward Waters Tigers. So congratulations there. And of course, as you can see, Savannah State against Southeastern, Newberry taking on Allen University, West Alabama at Morehouse, Mississippi College at Albany State, and Elizabeth City will be taking on Benedict later on in the night. And these are scores that you have the opportunity of seeing. As I said, those scores as well as the upcoming games. And I'm just geeked right now, so excuse me for being just ultra hyped right now. Even though I may not show it, but I can hardly contain myself with all of the football games that are currently on television right now that I'm currently keeping an eye on. And also tomorrow, I was actually scheduled to be at the Alabama State Miles College game, but because other duties called me away, I was unable to attend that particular game. I was scheduled to be at not only the Alabama State Miles College game, but I was also scheduled to be at the Red Tail Classic game tomorrow between Tuskegee and Fort Valley State. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend either game, but trust me when I say as soon as the show is over, I plan to watch the other games and make sure that we report to you. And more than likely, I'll even have a pregame show tomorrow night prior to the Jackson State Florida A&M, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself, aren't I? But that's okay. But as I said, what we wanted to do was make sure we give you an update not only on the current games that are going on, but the games that are upcoming. And let's take a look at the CIAA again here. And as far as the CIAA, these were games that were played on September 1st. And on September 1st, you had St. Augustine losing by a score of 70-13. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce Tusculum University's name because I'm quite sure I'm going to mispronounce it. But they did lose by a score of 70-13. St. Augustine's did. Johnson C. Smith traveled to Bluefield State College, and they lost by 1 point. Great outing for Johnson C. Smith, but they lost by a score of 35-34. Shawan lost to Barton by a score of 17-3, and Virginia University of Lynchburg lost to Virginia Union by a score of 77-0. I was told by one of my colleagues that for homecoming games, not Virginia Union, but the University of Virginia Lynchburg is the team that a lot of universities choose if they want to have a winning homecoming game. And it's bad when you have a team that has that reputation. Many, many, many years ago, Mississippi Valley and Texas Southern had that reputation from the SWAC, that if you wanted to have a winning homecoming game, then you would schedule one of those teams. Also, at one point in time, not today, even though because of scheduling, they may not have a choice, but also University of Arkansas Pine Bluff had that reputation as well. But today in the SWAC, there are no easy outs. And you hear me say this pretty much every broadcast because it's the truth. There are no easy outs. Each team has upgraded their coaches and they have upgraded their personnel that they are recruiting. And it is paying off dividends. And we shall see how well those dividends continue to pay off later on in the year when you enter into conference play. Let's go ahead and take a look at the CIAA. We've already reported earlier on the success of Bowie State defeating New Haven by a score of 27-20, and also Delaware State winning their game as well. And let's see what we may have, if we have any other scores that we can give you from the CIAA. If we have any updates on any of the scores. And as I said, Livingstone and the Indians are tied 7-7, and of course, Lenore Ryan, they're leading 10-7 over Virginia State. But right now, all of the other games, they're over, and Shaw is yet to get kicked off. They should be getting ready to get started, though. But all of the other games, they are either over or just getting started. And on September 4th, which is tomorrow, on Sunday, you have Winston-Salem State traveling to Central State, and that game will be kicked off at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. As I said, this is just a great weekend and for football. Last weekend, I was in the state of Georgia, traveled down to Atlanta, Georgia, and for that, I had the opportunity to go to the B.L.O.C. Challenge. Unfortunately, because of many delays for that game, I had to leave early, but I was able to listen in, and the game was a great game, even though the score may have not indicated it, but it was a really good game between Howard University, or Howard Bison, against the Alabama State Hornets. And finally, the SWAC finally won another game. And this score for that game in the B.L.O.C., the Cricket B.L.O.C. Challenge, that score was 23-13. Game won by Alabama State. And the Hornets finally got the monkey off the SWAC's back by defeating the Bison of Howard University. And the one thing I can easily tell you, it was not an easy game. The Bison came in there with the expectation of winning. Now, of course, Coach Robinson for the Hornets, the one thing that he indicated is that we're going to win. So he came out, and good, bad, or indifferent, he said before the game, we're going to win this. So he put the heat on himself, making sure that the heat was not on the players, but he put the heat on himself. And guess what he did? He followed up, he followed through, and they ended up winning the game. So congratulations to the Alabama State Hornets by defeating the Howard Bison by a score of 23-13 in the B.L.O.C. Challenge on last week in Atlanta, Georgia. So congratulations to them. But let's take a look at the MEAC. And as far as the MEAC goes, here are the scores and upcoming games in the MEAC. And you have South Carolina State losing to Central Florida by a score of 56-10. And other games that are coming up, you have Howard against Hampton. That's still to come up and play later on today. Morgan State against Georgia Southern. A&T against Central. Delaware State played earlier today, and let me go back to that particular score if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Delaware State defeated Lincoln by a score of 34-0, and of course, Norfolk State lost to Marshall by a score of 55-3. And we have an early score between Hampton and Howard. Right now in the second quarter, you have Howard leading by a score of 6-0 over the Hampton Pirates. And Howard is visiting Hampton, and as a matter of fact, with that score in mind, the one thing I will say is that they're expecting to win. The players are expecting to win. And with this early lead, and as a matter of fact, they took an early lead in the MEAC SWAC Challenge. It was 3-0, but yet and still they took an early lead. But Alabama State eventually showed the dominance, and they ended up winning the game. But Howard has a different mentality this year. So if you are a Howard University alum, I think you have a lot to cheer for this year. You may not have a winning season, but you have a lot to cheer for, because I can tell you one thing. This football team is going to give you a lot of excitement for the rest of the year and for a few years to come, because with Coach Scott there at the helm for the university, for Howard University, you will have a lot to cheer for this year. And I would attend, I would support my team, support those players, and support them not only in the rah-rah, let's go, but also support them financially. Because if you don't support them financially, no one else will. If the alumni doesn't support your university, why should anyone else? So make sure you go through and you support your university. And as I said, here are the scores of some of the other games. And as I take a look, you have Morgan State. Wow. They're tied currently right now with Georgia Southern. And that game is tied at 7-all. And that game is in the second quarter. And their new head coach, I can see why he was expecting to say, look, we're expecting to be there. We don't care who we have to play, but we're expecting to be in a championship game. And they're expecting to be in the Celebration Bowl this year. Not next year, but this year. So we will see if his prognostication will actually come up to be what he expects. But it's going to be interesting what actually transpires in the MEAC this year. It's going to be exciting. A lot of people are still expecting South Carolina State to come out of the MEAC. That is the prediction for the MEAC conference this year, for South Carolina State to still be the number one team. Of course, with Morgan State not faring it well. But that's why they play the game. So we shall see. And as we move on, let's take a look at the SWAC conference. And with the SWAC, these were the games that were played earlier on September 1st. So you had UAPB just slamming the Alabama A&M. You know what? Gosh, I'm sorry. 59-0. It tells you what one player can do for a team without Akil Glass and some of the other players that they had. It could be a long season for them this year. It could really be a long season for Alabama A&M this year. And we're hoping that they have some level of success And if they do not, then the Bulldogs are in for a long, long season. And they are a very proud team. I know they are, because I had a chance to talk to the coach, and they're a very proud team. But with what UAPB did, and without some of the players that have graduated, it'll be interesting to see if this is a rebuilding team or a reloading team. A lot of people look at this first week of college football as the money weekend, where a lot of HBCUs, they play schools, they get paid, and unfortunately they are blown out of the game. The one game I did not have up here, and the one game that I'm not showing, and that is my fault, was the Florida State game. Florida A&M score from last week when they played the University of North Carolina, and that is one game that I do not have up there. And they played very well for the first three quarters, even though North Carolina ended up pulling away in that particular game. But Florida A&M ended up playing very well. A lot of individuals said either Florida A&M has a really good team, or North Carolina State. I just want to add state to the end of everybody's university, so I apologize. But what they were saying is that either the University of North Carolina, either they have a porous defense, or FAMU has a really good offense. And today, you could pretty much say that, because Appalachian State was able to hang 49 points on North Carolina. University of North Carolina eventually ended up winning that game. The last time I heard was that score was 56-49. Yes, you heard me, 56-49. Appalachian State ended up scoring. The score was like 21-7 or 21-3. Then all of a sudden, UNC, they came back and scored 34 straight points. Then here comes Appalachian State, and they ended up tying the game at 49 all, deep into the fourth quarter. Then all of a sudden, the last I heard, UNC, University of North Carolina, who Florida A&M played last week, ended up pulling out that game. And as a matter of fact, I do want to verify that that they did end up winning that game, because that game continued to go back and forth. And the only reason why I'm even mentioning the University of North Carolina is because of the game that UNC played last week against FAMU. But the game itself was absolutely great for what it had to offer. And as a matter of fact, unfortunately, even though I wanted to mention the score of that game to you, and I will be getting to Bethune-Cookman's game against the University of Miami, but I'll be getting to that in just a few minutes. Not a good score if you're a Bethune-Cookman fan, but in terms of unfortunately, I don't see the score of North Carolina, and I apologize to you guys, but I did want to, and the only reason why I'm staying on this is just to say what Florida A&M and perhaps what Jackson State is in for, because they could possibly be in for a really hard game this year. they played a hard-fought game last year against the FAMU Rattlers, and this year it seems like it's going to be the exact same thing. That it's going to be an uphill battle against them again this year. And as a matter of fact, I apologize. That game ended up being 63-61 North Carolina. And that just lets you know that they have a very porous defense, the Tar Heels of North Carolina. Hence the reason why the Rattlers of Florida A&M were able to score the number of points that they did. And as far as that, the score of that game from last week, that score was 56-24. Now the Rattlers were unable to do any scoring in the second half. In the fourth quarter, but they were able to score 7 in the first, 7 in the second, and 10 points in the third quarter. So for the first 3 quarters, they played them pretty tight. But after the fourth quarter, in the fourth quarter, UNC ended up scoring 21 points, making sure that they put that game away. And the reason why I bring that up, because as you look at the scoreboard for upcoming games in the SWAC conference, this is the schedule. Now, the first game that you see, Bethune-Cookman at Miami, unfortunately, Bethune-Cookman ended up losing that particular game, and the final score of that game, let's see if I can scroll down to get to that score. The final score of that game was 70-13. So, as I said, 70-13. Bethune-Cookman ended up losing to the University of Miami, the Miami Hurricanes. And they stormed all over them, unfortunately. But that's why they played the game. Second game, you have Miles College playing Alabama State. And that game right now, in the second quarter, that score is 21-3. And that game is being led by Alabama State. So Alabama State is having their way with Miles College, but Alabama State should have their way with Miles College because Miles College is in a different division, and Alabama State is an FCS school. So they should be having their way, and the score happens to be 21-3. Alabama State leading in the second quarter. Now, as far as the other games, you have UAPB playing Lane College. Arkansas State will host Grambling. Southern is hosting Florida Memorial. Stephen F. Austin travels to Alcorn, and this happens to be one of those yearly rivals that Alcorn State plays. And then, of course, Texas Southern plays Prairie View. And all of these games, the scores are central time that you see. And also on Sunday, hence the reason why I spent so much time talking about North Carolina and what North Carolina ended up doing when they played Florida A&M. You have the Rattlers of Florida A&M playing Jackson State University. So the Tigers of Jackson State, they are the home team in the Orange Blossom Classic this year. And, of course, being a Tiger, you know where my heart lies. And my heart lies with the Tigers of Jackson State, hoping and praying that, yes, they pull out another victory. And because the winner of this game appears to be especially if everything holds true as it did last year, the winner of this game will go into the Celebration Bowl. Or, should I say, the winner of this game would go on to the SWAC championship game first off. Because in order to get to the Celebration Bowl, you first must make it to the SWAC championship game, then you must win the SWAC championship game in order to qualify for the Celebration Bowl. But if everything holds true and holds through, then Jackson State or Florida A&M will move on to the Southwestern Athletic Conference Championship game. But we have a long season yet ahead. And the advantage that Florida A&M has is that Florida A&M, they've played a game. So they will know the adjustments they need to make. Jackson State, they still, even though they've played lots of scrimmages against each other, but the players, and I can tell you, you get tired of hitting the same person over and over and over and over again. And now those players for Jackson State, they're ready to hit someone. But the difference is that Florida A&M, they have a game under their belt. And it makes a difference in a lot of cases when you already have one game under your belt. You know how your team is going to play. You know what adjustments you need to make. You know how your team is going to react doing game speed, doing real game speed instead of scrimmaging. Because even though it's a scrimmage and you're trying to go at real time, you still have some players that may not go 100% because they're going against their teammate. And you may not go all out. But in this particular game with Jackson State and Florida A&M, a lot of individuals that I talked to indicated there was no way they would have played this game against North Carolina. Because going up against an FBS school, you're going to get beat up. Because what happens is that most of the time the line, offensive line, and the defensive line, most of the time they're bigger and some of the times they're stronger than the guys from the FCS. Doesn't matter if it's HBC or any of the other FCS schools. But most of the time that is the biggest issue, is that the offensive line and the defensive line are much bigger and much stronger, which makes a huge difference when it comes to playing, especially in the trenches. And when those guys play in the trenches, yes, you're going to get beat up. And that's what happened. And the question is, and I don't have this answer, but I hope to have this answer for you tomorrow, is whether or not those 20 or so players for Florida A&M will be playing against the Tigers. Because they did not play against North Carolina. But look at the way they played against the Tar Heels. That says a lot about the coaching staff for Florida A&M. That means they coached them up and prepared them. And they were prepared. And as far as I'm concerned, it was all about endurance going into the fourth quarter. They were prepared. They were ready. And they played their hearts out in that game against North Carolina. But in the end, in the fourth quarter, the big uglies, as they call them, it took their toll. And the Rattlers were unable to, I guess you would say, unable to accept the call in the fourth quarter. And the Tar Heels were able to score 21 points in the fourth quarter against the Rattlers. The Rattlers really made a good game of it. They really did. I listened to part of that game, and the way they played, they do not have a reason to hang their heads. And as I said, they are actually prepared to play Jackson State because they already have gameplay, and they played with game speed for that one game. So they're more prepared. Even if Jackson State has the better team, even if, notice I said if, even if Jackson State has the better team, Florida A&M is more prepared because they have already played one game. And as I look at the score and the score of one of the other games for Howard, Howard is still leading the Pirates of Hampton University by a score of 6-0. And the reason why I say that is because they already have a game under their belt. That makes a difference. Hampton may have the better team, but Howard already has a game underneath the belt. And as I look at the scores, I also see Georgia Southern finally pulling away from Morgan State, and that score happens to be 17-7. So they're making Georgia Southern is making a big move in that game, but we'll keep our eyes on the score of that game. But as I said, if you want to keep an eye on the scores of all of the HBCUs and the scores of all of the other games, make sure you go to our website, www.yourstreet.tv. That's www.yourstreet.tv. Now let's also take a look at some of the other scores from the other teams that are not in an HBCU conference. That's one thing that we did not do, but let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. And as we take a look here, we will see that Tennessee State, that game is in a delay in the third quarter, and they are trailing Eastern Washington by a score of 29-19. And as I said, that score is in the third quarter. And of course, we just finished talking about Hampton and Howard. That score is still 6-0. As we take a look at some of the other scores, Florida Memorial against Southern, that scores in the first quarter. No team has scored as of yet. And of course, A&T being in another conference as well. They play later on tonight. That game should be getting ready to get kicked off at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. But if, as I said, for you to keep up with the scores today, make sure you go to www.yourstreet.tv. That's www.yourstreet.tv to make sure you have updated scores of all of your most favorite HBCU games. And we're going to go, because I'm quite sure you want to watch. If you're currently not watching your favorite HBCU football game, you should be, because guess what I'm getting ready to do? I'm getting ready to get off the air and watch as many football games as I possibly can that's currently going on. But I wanted to make sure that as we started this pregame show, that we had the opportunity to leave you with some of the upcoming games, discuss some of the games that are already taken place, and also get you up to date on the latest scores. But as I said, if you want to get the latest on all of the HBCU scores, go to www.yourstreet.tv and you'll get the latest on all of your HBCU football games. And I will go ahead and get signed off now, because as I said, what I want you to prepare to do is make sure that you get a chance to listen to your latest football scores, because I am getting ready to enjoy me some football. And so may God bless you. And we will see you tomorrow, because we will have another pregame show just prior to the Jackson State playing Florida A&M. So see you then, and have a great day.